right, where's Brother David, the co-writer? Where is he? Where is he? Come right on up, my brother. That's what it is. So far. I don't know about you, but I'm just overwhelmed. Full of righteous indignation, holy anger, as well as moral outrage. But it takes me back in some ways to what the great Du Bois wrote. He's 89 years old. Lifetime of struggle. He said, I've been wrestling with these questions all my life. How shall integrity meet oppression? What does honesty do in the face of deception? What does decency do in the face of insult? How shall virtue meet brute force? And we've seen, of course, the night side of the American empire. It's not new. It's been around for a long time. I see my dear brother, another major filmmaker here, Brother Shachter, but it's been around a long time. But to see it now, especially the liberal Democratic president, the Democratic Party, and the refusal of so many to really want to accent integrity, decency, honesty, and virtue that cuts deep so that the precious brothers and sisters like Duad in Afghanistan or Somalia or Yemen or any other place, Latin America, or the 70 other countries, that their lives have a value, they have a weight, they have a significance, that they're not rendered invisible as part of the cannon fodder or collateral damage of the U.S. killing machine. It's not a matter of demonizing America in the abstract. It's a matter of trying to be honest, decent, and tell the truth about the underside of the American empire with the humanity and the humility and the sense of humor of our dear brother Jared. And so forth. I should say that for me, on a personal level, I just had to interview Brother Julian Assange just a week or so ago in London. We had on the radio show, and Monday I was there with Brother Bradley Manning at Fort Meade with Chris Hedges. So you can imagine to be part and parcel of such a courageous cloud of witnesses. Because for me, Brother Bradley, Brother Julian, Brother Jeremy, Brother David, Brother Richard as well, part of the truth tellers. And I'm not trying to be self-righteous in this regard. I'm not trying to somehow elevate them beyond their humanity. But in this particular dark moment in a world dominated by the American empire, the weaponization of space, the militarization of cyberspace, the criminalization of truth tellers, and I must say as a Christian, I'm praying for you. It's true though, brother. That's serious, man, because I come from a tradition, we still got political prisoners in the U.S. prisons. And to come out of the black freedom struggle, where those questions of integrity and decency and honesty cuts across ideology, cuts across politics, who just wants to tell the truth, bear witness, and be willing to die. This brother wants to tell the truth. He's willing to live and die. And for 30 years, I've been willing to live and die for the same thing, though, brother. That's why I get fired up when it comes to your work, too, man. You want to say a number of things, though, brother?
I wanted to say that I'm honored to be here with you tonight, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I was doing an event the other night at the New School, and I had just gotten off the train from D.C. and I'm racing to get over to the event, and I'm walking in, and the first person that I see walking to the event is Dr. West. And I said, are you going to teach a course here? He said, no, I'm going to protect you. So it's maybe my own form of black water.
Black water. Protect you. Maybe nobody messing with my brother. Yes.
Maybe we could hear from some folks.
Absolutely.
But thank you all for being here. And, You know, I always get moved when we see the credits of our film because so many people gave of themselves to make this film, and you know, we hold with us the colleagues in Yemen and Somalia and Afghanistan and around the world who took real risks to make this film. And you know, we've been texting pictures back to people in Yemen and in Somalia and in Afghanistan throughout the course of this process, and they know that this film is opening up. And a friend of mine in Yemen said to me today, you know, do you think Americans are actually going to know the name of the village of Al-Majla in Yemen? And I said, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they do, and that they know what happened to that village. And so we, on behalf of everyone that worked on this, just thank you for coming and sharing this with us. It's the first time that we've seen audiences of people that didn't have to come, but chose to come, and it really, it means the world to us, and I'm just eager to hear what you have to say, and thank you.
Brother West.
I did, brother.
Hi, Danny
That's the
Schechter.
filmmaker.
Just a
I'm talking
question.
about Brother Danny right here.
Just a question. You know, you have spoken out against President Obama. You've organized against his policies. You've been, you know, a force, to try to change the whole discourse in the United States. What insight do you have about this man, this president of ours? How did he either go so terribly wrong or always was that way and we just didn't know it, or many of us didn't know it? What have you learned from this period of opposition, you know, that you've been mounting against President Obama? What should we learn about him, and what can we do about it, really?
Well, I do think that we're at a moment of escalation because the sleepwalking has been so deep. The American people have been wrestling with levels of desperation, frustration, and wholesale capitulation on behalf of liberal leadership, and in some ways even progressive leadership. But now the veil is lifting. This film was a part of it. The book, Dirty Wars, 521 pages of it. Lifting the veil so that people just think, could this be true? I think part of the problem is we've been so obsessed, and our brother Carl Dixon knows about this. We've been wrestling with this, go to jail together from the Revolutionary Communist Party, and we love to work together, overlapping various ways. We've been so obsessed with the right wing. And MSNBC is a good example of that, right? They're parasitic in so many ways on Fox News. And we so obsessed with the right wing that we figured, my God, if we could just have a liberal, if we could just have a centrist, we could have somebody who somehow would hold at arm's length the reactionary forces in the Republican Party, we might be able to unleash progressive possibilities. That was the discourse of 2008. How wrong we were. How wrong we were. Not to say that the right wing should have won the election, but to say that, my God, with the liberal centrists winning the election and these kind of war crimes, these kind of vicious lies around the world in our name, continues with the worst of who we are, not the best, but the worst of who we are. Now, I can't psychoanalyze Brother Barack at all. I just say that he's committed a war crime. It's a war crime. He needs to be brought to trial. He needs to be brought to trial. And he's not alone. Brennan, Craven, Clinton, right across the board. All of them who coordinated at the top to think that somehow this could be hidden and concealed. Needs to be accountable, answerable, responsible. And in many ways, of course, this is true for, in some ways, all of us. Great Rabbi Abraham Heschel used to say, yes, some are guilty, but all are responsible. That's true for the American people are responsible, too.
Hi, my name is Jeff Ingersoll. I'm a defense reporter for Business Insider. I'm also a veteran. I was in Anbar in 2006, and then again in 2008 up near Mosul. I embedded with Marines in Helmand when I got out of school as a civilian reporter. And I was just wondering, it was a little dark, the film was dark. Do you carry the dead with you? And if you do, how do you cope?
Well, that's a deep question, and I mean, I would ask you the same. You know, given your experience in Iraq, I'm sure you've known people that have died, and I would imagine, like everyone, you carry it with you. One of the things when we started making this film, I didn't want to be in the film in this way. I didn't want it to have any of myself in it. I don't write in the first person, and I don't talk about myself. And we had made a very different version of this film where I was more of a sort of like a tour guide through this archipelago of covert war sites. And we made a 4-hour-long movie. And we asked our friend David Riker to start working with us on how to cut it down to 2 hours. And in the process of collaborating and working with him, he started to say, I think you're missing a big part of the story, which is how the past 12 years have changed us as people. And he said, you tell me these stories as a friend over beers or over dinner about how things have, how the things you've experienced have affected you, and I think that has to be part of the story. That you have to allow viewers to come along with you. And part of that is being honest about your own failings or your own fears, and we made a totally different movie over the course of a year. And I realized when we were writing the script, there's a line in there where I said I wasn't sure if I was going back to Yemen to file another story, to investigate another crime, or was it to apologize. That came out of a conversation we had where I realized, and I had never realized this about myself before, that going back to the first times I went to Iraq in the 1990s, and then Yugoslavia, Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan, when I would sit down with families whose loved ones were killed in a missile strike or in a night raid, I always would apologize to them. And I was wondering, why did I feel the need to do that? Was it just that I was being polite, or did it feel like the right thing to do in the moment? And in really actually trying to process why is that? It's because in many cases, I'm going to be the only American that they will ever meet, besides the people who kicked down their doors and killed their loved ones. And in the case of the Bedouin villagers in Al Majala, they've never met an American before. They only met American missiles, and they may never meet an American again. And it was important to me, no matter if I'm against the policy, that someone from this society said, we are sorry. Because ultimately this is all being done in our names. And this film gutted me as a person. I find it very hard to watch the film myself because of the memories of people, but I do carry the dead with me. Colleagues that have died, but also people I've met along the way, going back to the first trips I took as a reporter. And I think that if you stop carrying the dead with you, then you stop living. Because it's only by carrying the memories of those people that you're able to actually make sense of what all of us have been through. And that's part of what we try to do with this film, is to make it real. It's why you see the images of so many children in the film. There's a scene at the end, and you can't really see it on the screen, but if you were to blow it up and magnify it, there's a little girl that has these piercing eyes at the very end of the film in the village of Al Majala. And if you were to freeze frame that and blow it up, what you would see in her eyes is a reflection of Rick with his camera and me standing in front of her. And it's you can actually see it. And I've thought about that a lot. How does she see us? Her family members killed. How does she see us? And we see our own reflection in her. And for me, that's one of the more profound images that I carry with me. I remember that girl's face is fossilized, in my mind. Do any women want to ask any questions? Gender?
Can you talk about the current status of the Yemeni journalist who was in prison because of his reporting? Repeat the question.
The question was about the Yemeni journalist Abdullah Haider Shaya, who we see is in prison in the film. He remains in prison right now, and he released. They smuggled a message out of prison last week from him, and he said in his message, I don't want people to say that the Americans are holding me in prison. I want them to know that there's only one person who's responsible for me being in prison, and it's President Barack Obama. And he thanked journalists. He said, I've been told that there are journalists, including from America, who've been raising the issue of my case. And he said, I thank them. And someone else who went to visit him in prison recently said that he was aware of the reporting that we were doing on him. And that it was one of the things keeping him going, the idea that people outside of Yemen actually cared about his case. But this should be a stain on our society, the idea that the Nobel Peace Prize winning constitutional law professor, Democratic president, is keeping a journalist in Yemen in prison by simply picking up the phone and telling the president of another nation, we want your citizen to remain in your prison. And I think it's shameful that the media outlets that he did work for, they were happy when he was printing them sensational stories, when he was providing them with sensational stories, interviews with Al-Qaeda leaders in Yemen. ABC News, Washington Post, NBC News all ran that journalist's work. None of them have said anything about his imprisonment. It's shameful. I asked one journalist at one of those networks, at one of those media outlets, why don't you speak up for Abdullah Haider-Shaya? And he said the White House called us and told us that he's using the money we pay him to fund al-Qaeda operations. Now, anyone who's worked with local journalists in other countries know American journalists are some of the cheapest in the world and don't pay these people anything. So if that's al-Qaeda's fundraising operation, then they've got a sorry fundraising operation if they're depending on that journal. And he is a real journalist. If you actually take the time to read his journalism, far more critical than those yahoos in the front row at the White House press corps who play super soaker at Joe Biden's house and laugh at drone jokes at the White House correspondence.
We should note that the book that I talked about, Dirty Wars, instant classic, powerful, and now here's number 5 already on the New York Times bestseller list, is dedicated to journalists killed in battle, pursuing truth, and in prison. And that's very important given the low quality of so much of journalism these days.
Sorry, we've got time for one more question.
I have a question. Thank you for this, and the timing could be better. Given what's happening with Bradley Manning, Julian Assange, the surveillance issues coming out, and all what's happening to the criminalization of all the whistleblowers in America, I'm just curious, aren't you scared for yourself and with what's happening in the future of journalism, if this is the trend we're looking at, and these people are in jail without any rights? Are you next?
Well, I would say thank you for that question, except I'm not thankful for it. Look, I mean, I think, you know, I don't mean to make light of it. Part of the reason I feel embarrassed when people ask me that is that I know actual brave reporters. I leave those countries and go back to the land of baby strollers and lattes of Park Slope, Brooklyn, while my colleagues from all of these countries are in the line of fire. One of our colleagues in Somalia was shot multiple times. He was put in a prison that the U.S. is supporting in Mogadishu as an act of intimidation to tell him, if you film these operations again, this is going to become your new home. There are journalists missing in Syria right now. The record numbers of journalists are being killed around the world, and the vast majority of them are not American correspondents. They are unfamous journalists who are often toiling away, doing the daily beat journalism, oftentimes partnering up with more famous journalists who get the byline, and they're lucky if they get a little afterthought there. So when people ask me, you know, about am I worried about something, I'm worried about them. And you know, I get invited on cable news shows, and I am at far less risk than my friends and colleagues around the world. But I think everyone that's doing this kind of reporting right now, whether they're for the Associated Press or they're independent journalists, you know, we're suing. I'm a plaintiff in suing to try to end the secrecy in the Bradley Manning proceedings. Anyone who's doing this now is in the sights of the government, and they're in people's emails. They're in your phone records. You know, what's been revealed by Glenn Greenwald and others over these past few days about the extent of the national security state. Many of us already, I think, suspected that this was happening, but the stakes are very high right now. And if there is not a collective uprising against this, if people don't stand united, whether you're journalists or you're just concerned citizen, then it's going to continue. It's easy to be against these policies when a cartoonish villain like Cheney or Bush is in power. Your real principle is tested when someone like President Obama is in power. That's when, you know, if you have the audacity to stand up under a Democratic administration, then you actually have a principle. Then it's not just checking your conscience at the coat check of the Obama presidency and then picking it back up the next time a Republican is in office. You have to be the same person if it's a principle. So, you know, I mean, I admire those people that have the bravery and courage to stand up in dark times like these. And unfortunately, they have to be able to bring people out in the rain, and they need to come into this theater, which is why we have to cut it.